This is the Franchise QB Podcast, where we empower entrepreneurs to win big in franchising. We huddle up weekly to educate our audience about the most successful small business model ever created, franchising.
Welcome to the Franchise QB Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Halpern, a 20-year industry veteran and entrepreneur. My mission is for listeners to achieve their American dreams of creating wealth and independence through franchise ownership. Every week, we speak with franchisees, franchisors, or vendors that support the industry. Thank you for joining us, and let's get started. Joining us in the huddle today is Ford Saeks, serial entrepreneur, AI integration strategist, marketing and sales expert, and Hall of Fame keynote speaker. Welcome to the show, Ford.
Hey, thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
It is great to have you, and I really like your setup back there. You can tell you're a pro. So, Ford, you help organizations with growth, outpacing disruption, turning complexity into clarity. 25 years of experience and more than 1 billion with a B in client-driven sales, and you specialize in aligning leadership, marketing, sales, and AI innovation to deliver measurable results, which I know a lot of companies are looking for. You have launched more than 10 companies, authored 6 business books, earned 3 U.S. patents, and trained thousands across multiple industries. So before we get into your strategies here on the Franchise QB about how franchise owners can benefit, tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, I really appreciate that. I can tell you this, that the more I've learned, the more I know I don't know. So I just want to set that. I love that introduction where I get all the accolades and social proof. People want to learn more about me. They can just Google me. But my background really started as an entrepreneur at a very young age. And I was able to come up with some ideas and add value. I was kind of a troubled youth and got a lot of attention negatively. And then once I found out that I could add value and make a profit and create things of value, then my entrepreneurial journey started. So I started at 15 years old, my first business. And now I've had, over a dozen, and 3 were 8-figure businesses. And so I've had a chance to really learn along the way and make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And it's good to turn all that negative energy into positive stuff for the universe. So it's a good thing that shift took place, and it sounds like it's made you really successful as an entrepreneur and businessman. So let's, here on the Franchise QB, we want to help franchise owners figure out the way forward and what franchising is all about. So in your view, what is the biggest mindset shift that an aspiring franchisee needs to make before they sign on the dotted line and actually join the franchise system?
Well, when they're an entrepreneur and they're looking to either a new franchisee or they've already signed or they're considering, I think it's really important to understand that regardless of where they are with the growth or the opportunity in their business, to get where they want to go, there's going to be 3 main areas of focus, okay? I found this in big brands, small brands, service brands, senior care, retail, quick serve restaurants, fast casual, everything in franchising. I found that the gap from where someone is to where they want to go comes down to one of 3 areas. First, it's their mindset. If you ask me, Mike, what's the most important thing that they should do? It's their mindset, because all the strategies and tactics in the world, especially that's one of the advantages of joining, becoming a franchisee, is you have a system to follow. Mm-hmm. But if your mindset isn't dialed in, if you're not open-minded, coachable, a critical thinker, proactive, and take personal accountability for your own results, best systems in the world won't help. So start with that mindset first, and then, of course, follow your system. The biggest thing in franchising, as we both know, my decades in franchising, is the franchisor just wants the franchisees to utilize their tools and follow their systems. And the franchisee, mostly new franchisees, are like, hey, I just invested my life savings, or I've just, invested in this new business. Why isn't national or corporate driving more business? So, you've got your mindset, you got your strategies, and then it's how do you actually execute?
Yeah, and I think the mindset thing comes into play with the candidates that I interact with, because a lot of them, if they take the approach of, the franchisor is to sell me on why they're so great, it's like, well, you as the owner really dictate the success of the business. The mindset you bring to the table is how those systems get executed. So, I really spend a lot of time with people educating them that, like, hey, go in there. This is a 2-way street. Like, They're vetting you the way you're vetting them. Make sure this is a mutual fit. And then don't get in this thing to reinvent it. Get in it because you like what you see as it is. And yes, you can add value and kind of maybe make enhancements, but you're not investing in this thing to reinvent it, right? So that's really good advice. So let's talk about what are some of the proven marketing and sales strategies that franchise owners can use to ramp up faster once they're in the system?
Well, for proven strategies, it's really important to think about, in business, they're going to be strong in one of three areas: marketing and sales, finance and accounting, leadership, managing the business, or delivering the product or service. A lot of people get into franchising because they were a practitioner. Maybe they were a plumber and now they wanted to buy a plumbing franchise. So they were a practitioner. And so the best marketing tools work is first to remember that all the marketing and sales tactics in the world won't overcome a bad customer experience. So you have to make sure that you look at your entire customer journey from a suspect to a prospect to a qualified lead to a customer client all the way to an advocate. And you have to look at that customer experience and say, okay, where do I really need to communicate the best? Now I just want to cover that first. Now, as far as the sales tactics, a franchisee is responsible for their local territory, their local marketing area, right? And so it's a combination of being present in the community, building the network, building the relationships, realizing that there's a lot of opportunity for growth, even if there's increased competition and even if you feel like you're in an oversaturated market. Having that mindset of there's always more business. So I always ask, the centers of influence, who else reaches the same target market that you're trying to reach, and how can you build relationships with them? So that's one way, centers of influence. Obviously, referrals. I talk to a lot of businesses and they're like, oh yeah, we get some referrals. And I'm like, do you have a referral culture? What's that? Do you have something very specific you do to generate referrals? Well, not really. Does your frontline staff and the people who answer your phone do it? No. And so when it comes to referrals, helping your staff and everybody understand these two sentences. First, every time there's a happiness moment, ask for a review. So as soon as someone says, oh man, this was I just had whatever the service or product was, as soon as you see happiness, ask for a review or get your cell phone out and get a testimonial, because that's social proof, right? So that's the first thing. Second thing is to tell them, don't keep us a secret. And then they're going to look at you, Mike, and go what do you mean don't keep us a secret? And you say these exact words: we're never too busy to help your fill in the blank, friends, colleagues, coworkers, solve whatever the business is. So if it was home services or senior care or, a quick serve restaurant, they say, hey, we're never too busy to help your friends or colleagues with a wonderful meal or a wonderful experience. So the referrals, the local area marketing, the centers of influence, those are really important ones that don't cost a lot of money. It's just really about training and the mindset. Now, then, of course, there's always how do you get traffic and how do we stand out in a search business. And, AI has changed the game. So, I tell people right now that there's no SEO anymore. It's IAO. It's optimizing for artificial intelligence, because the search engines aren't search engines anymore, Mike. They're not. I mean, Google's not Google anymore. It's an AI tool, and the AI tools are now becoming search engines. So I think within the next few months, you're going to see this change, this catastrophic seismic change in how businesses get leads. And so I know if you're listening to this right now, you're probably thinking, oh my goodness, there's so much disruption. I would tell you, you got to really pay attention to what's going on with the AI landscape. AI is not going to replace humans, but it's going to replace humans and franchisees that aren't using it.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about AI in a moment. And I like your point about kind of making a system around your referrals, because people like franchise owners generally will do that at the direction of their franchisor through traditional lead gen, but they don't do it with referrals. So coming up with a predictable, repeatable, teachable referral program, I mean, those are, potential clients that convert a lot quicker when they're warm instead of cold. So I really like that. I think that's good advice. And on the AI, you're totally right. Like, you go to Google and type it in. Most people don't even look at the first result. They just look at the AI summary, and that's very different than it was a year ago. So appreciate that. So let's kind of continue down the road with AI, automation and franchising. How can today's franchise owners start using AI to streamline tasks, gain a competitive edge without having to be tech experts? Everyone's scared of AI. How do we harness it?
Well, I would say the first caution is everybody with a laptop is now an AI expert. So just there's a lot of disinformation and misinformation. I mean, you can't open up your inbox without seeing every vendor and every supplier soliciting some type of AI, including me, by the way. I'm sending out emails on AI webinars and lead magnets. So I'm part of that bandwagon. Although you can check my credentials, I actually can deliver real value. But anyway, I never want to cut anyone else down. I just want to say this. The biggest thing is just be cautious, use common sense, understand that this is a tool. It's not an or, it's an and. You are going to be using AI, and you probably are using AI in everything, because every program going forward is going to have some element of AI. It doesn't matter what it is. AI is going to be embedded in it. So not to get scared of it, and just to understand some basics. So let's go through a few basics. First, AI will hallucinate. It's biased. It can give you the bad results. So as a brand or business or franchisee, you have to make sure you set up acceptable use policies for your team. What's acceptable? What isn't? What's going to keep us compliant? What's not? And to set some guardrails. So you just don't have employees doing things that, or sharing data that might not work. So that's, got to be careful of the pitfalls. The next tip on AI would be, this is a human business. Deals don't happen before dialogue. Be visible. Be personal. AI can replace certain places in the customer journey. It can automate it. Like I've done over 500 episodes of my own podcast, Fortify. It's live on Wednesdays at 11 a.m. And I go and I interview CEOs and suppliers and brands to learn what they're doing. And I was just on with a quick serve restaurant, very famous. It'd be a big brand if I told you who it was. You guys can go through my history and find out who it was. But I was asking him this question because there's a lot of QSRs now that have those kiosks. You go in, I go through an airport, and if I want to order a hamburger, you don't see any people, right? You just walk up to the kiosk, you pick what you want, and hit order, and it goes. And what this CEO told me was they did a test that if there was an employee within eyesight of the kiosk, that sales went up by 30%. In other words, the employee wasn't even necessarily helping the person fill out the kiosk, but the fact that there was an employee there that could give guidance, it's 30%. They bought more foods, they tipped better. So just having that one employee. So, it's really looking at the whole experience with AI. Where should you use it? Because ultimately, you can't keep up on the technology is advancing so quickly. What I would tell people is you need to be using it. I would download it and I would put it on your phone. ChatGPT is where I would start for most people. If you have a ChatGPT account on your desktop, it's the same account you can get on your phone. You don't have to pay double. And start using it for voice. Start talking to it. That's what I have found to be the most compelling insight when I do this at a conference as an opening keynote speaker at a franchise brand. I'll pull someone up on stage and I'll do two things. One, Mike, I'll have them translate to a different language. So I pull someone out of the audience, like at PureClean. I keynoted PureClean and I said, what do you like best about PureClean? And say it in Spanish. So AI converted it to Spanish and the participant answered in Spanish and then it said in English. And everybody in the room was like, oh, that's so cool, which is really easy. It's like a party trick.
Yeah.
But they didn't even realize that they could use AI for audio.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. Yeah. And like I mentioned to you in the green room that we have our annual convention for FranServe on Sunday and it goes through Wednesday. And the first day, I wish you were a keynote because a lot of the insights you're sharing here will be great. But obviously people can tune into this podcast to pick it up. But, we're going to be talking AI all Sunday. That's what it is. It's just a training session and everyone's going to kind of pitch their take on AI. And that's what people are like going there with their kind of notebooks out and their AI listeners so that they can kind of gather as much data. So that's definitely first and foremost in our industry. It's at the forefront. So let's talk about some mistakes. You mentioned AI mistakes. What are some of the other pitfalls that franchise owners make and how can they avoid those?
Pitfalls in general or with AI or both?
Well, it's up to you. I mean, however you want to handle it.
Okay. So the biggest thing I think is being overconfident and not following your system. The biggest problem in franchising, is not following your system. Second thing is probably not taking advantage of the other franchisees in your system. No matter what system you're in, whether they have 25 units or 25,000 units, there are leaders in that system that have learned the life lessons that can help you. So taking advantage, going to the conferences, going to your conference and participating. So even though you think there might be a lost opportunity cost by going to the conference, Go to the conference, get out of your room, go to the lunches, sit somewhere different. Don't sit, if you come with 3 people from your team, don't sit with them the whole conference. Spread out, have someone's at a different table and do something different, right? It's just, you already spend time with those people. Go, they're used up. Go find some new people, right? So I think the biggest pitfalls are not taking advantage of the systems and trying too hard. You know, right now, and I'm going to jump back to AI for just a second, there's really no excuses anymore. It doesn't matter what you want to learn. There's a resource. I mean, it used to be we had to read books, and I've got, hundreds of books behind me. We had to read books. We had to go to seminars. We had to learn. Well, now, if I asked you, Mike, for example, how many books do you think you've ever read in your whole life? What would you say? Just throw out a number.
Let's say 400, but I'm probably being generous.
All right. So 400. What do you think your percentage from 0 to 100% of recall is of those books?
Very little.
Right. Mine too. I mean, I'd probably say too. I forget sometimes. I've even met people at a show and they're like, "Hey, Ford." And I'm like, "I don't remember it." And my assistant goes, "He was on your podcast last year." So here I spent 45 minutes with a guy, and maybe it's a senior moment, right? I don't know. Maybe that's it. But I didn't even remember it. But I would say this: AI has 100% recall. It's watched all the TED Talks. It's watched all the videos. It's read all the books. So why wouldn't you tap in to that knowledge base to try to get a better solution? So when I'm looking for problem solving, instead of trying to make mistakes, first of all, I take personal accountability for everything in my life. The first thing is, want to avoid mistakes? Forget the mistake, learn the lesson. Well, okay, great. I have made plenty of mistakes, everybody. There's no shortage of mistakes that I've made. We wouldn't have enough time in this episode to cover anything that I've made mistakes on. It's so many. But I would say just take personal accountability for your own success. Step back, take an assessment. Where are you now? Where do you want to go? And then create a strategic and tactical plan to get there. But again, going back to the episode opening, you got to have that mindset piece because, again, I've seen it. I'm an EO member, Entrepreneurs Organization. I speak at YPO and other organizations outside of franchising. I sit on boards and think tanks, and I can always tell the ones that are struggling, it's their mindset. It's not the product. The product is 20% of their success. The other 80% is marketing and letting people know that it's available.
I had this conversation yesterday with my 17-year-old son. I'm like, it's okay to make mistakes in life. It's okay to fail. You just have to go through these things and get better. And a lot of young people are scared to make those mistakes. A lot of old people are scared to make those mistakes. But that's how you learn. That's how you get better. But you have to be accountable and say, okay, I did it this way. It didn't work. Let me try this way. And I think if that mindset's in place, you can accomplish things a lot quicker. And it's just a better, game plan. So I think that makes a ton of sense. So let's talk about, every franchise system has the top performers, the bottom performers. Anytime a candidate is looking at item 19, they're like, well, I want to be like this person. How are they doing, so much revenue compared to the field? What can franchisees do, in your view, to become standout performers in a brand and get noticed by the franchisor and be a top kind of, operator within that model?
Yeah, I think the first part is creating that vision. And again, I'm not trying to, harp on the, hey, you got to have a mindset piece. I'm all for dream boards and positive thinking and thinking big. In fact, I have a Jeep Rubicon. The license plate is Think Big, THINKBG. But what I've learned is you got to think small too. If you want to be a top performer in any organization, you want to have that big, bold vision. But you also need to break it down into baby steps because sometimes that big, bold vision becomes too overwhelming. And, you find yourself a quarter goes by and a quarter goes by and you're looking at your income statement and your balance sheet. And you're looking at your metrics and you're thinking, gee, I really haven't moved the needles that much. And so I like to think big, but I also like to think small and then to take action. So, I'm going to have these big, bold goals and visions and things, but then I'm going to ask, okay, what am I going to do for the next 2 weeks? What are my top 3 priorities? I like to prioritize things in A, B, and C. Something that's absolutely necessary, that's an A. Mm-hmm. And then I have to ask myself, is it urgent and really important, or is it just something that I, think is important? Because I can easily condition myself as an entrepreneur to think everything's important. Every shiny object's, important. And it's not always, right? So I have to look at that what's absolutely necessary. That's the A. B is something that's before a certain date. So that would be something before a date. And C is just something that can wait. It's kind of like the parking lot. And so I've learned it with my team. I've taught my team that when something comes up, we have a decision-making matrix. We look at our vision, mission, and values and our goals for the quarter. And if I come up with a new shiny object, because I always come up with something new, they're going to say, okay, which one of these 17 things do you want to take off the list in order to do the one thing that you want? And so I've had to surround myself with critical thinking decision makers. Otherwise, I'd drive our bus right off the cliff. Like, I'm just telling you, I have to have smart people around me. So as a listener to this show, you have to know what your strengths and weaknesses are. Hire your weakness. Yes, you can try to make your weaknesses better. But, for me, Mike, it was always people. I understood how to market. I was a savvy, genius marketer, but I wasn't a great leader in early days. And I remember my first $1 million, I sold $1 million. And I went to my accountant. I'm like, I sold $1 million. I'm a millionaire. And she said, hold on there, Skippy. You sold $1 million. You're $150,000 in debt. And your actual salary was $16,000. So before you, and so she said, are you looking at your chart of accounts and your income statement? I didn't even know what any of that stuff was. I was paying people to do my books and my taxes, and I was just running out of my checkbook. If I had money in the bank, I was successful. And so I didn't understand inventory turns and the value of money and, net profits. And I didn't understand departments. And so I had to hire people. But then along the way, I've learned that now. So A, B, and C is one thing. Second part is M, T, and O. If you're going to do any key performance metrics, you want to have minimum, target, and optimal. So whenever I have a team, if they're working, let's say, on video marketing and we're looking at YouTube and we're trying to increase our influence, we measure M, T, and O. So what's the minimum that we know, okay, we're here, we need to get better, we need coaching. And sometimes it might be outside help. Target means, okay, we're hitting our target, and optimal is optimal. So with every team, every franchisor and franchisee actually could do MTNOs with your team so that they understand what success looks like. If they, if you're asking me what the best practices are, it's, you got to clearly communicate best practices and train people to standard and understand which situation do they need hand-holding and what situations can you just delegate. My biggest problem, Mike, is I delegated without details for years. I'd say, hey, Mike, go take care of this. And, I wouldn't give you all the details, and then you might fail, and you'd come back and be like, Mike, what the heck is going on? This isn't even right. And you'd be like, well, that's not what you told me. And I'm like, yeah, it is. And so we'd have this big riff, right? Hypothetically now, this is not Mike. I just want to be clariful for this episode.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Ford.
But I had to learn that it was really those three areas. So marketing, sales, leadership, delivering the products, don't overcomplicate it. Start simple, get complicated later.
Yeah, let's get specific. Let's bring it home for people that are listening, that are in the throes of operating a franchise. You've outlined a lot of strategies. Give us an example or two of how you've implemented those strategies to transform results for franchise operators.
So once I had a vision and metrics and a strategy and strategic plan, I went through a process of doing a brain dump. So we would get in a room and we would brain dump all our ideas. And if it's a franchise brand, then you look at what is the franchisor say? What are the best practices? We'd look at that, and then we would say, okay, we're gonna do a brain dump. We're gonna categorize them. We're going to chunk them into certain areas. So categorize and chunk is the same thing. Then we're going to prioritize which ones of these efforts are going to get us the best return based on our local market. And we're going to prioritize them. Then we're going to look specifically at the action steps and not just make a big, long list. But once we had our list, then we would say what are the time and resources needed to execute that one thing? So maybe it's building relationships with schools or sponsoring a ball team or having an open house and having people come, or maybe you have a corporate program where you're going to go out to businesses and offer your services to the business. And again, it depends on the franchise brand, right? But you brain dump first, chunk and categorize, then you list the activities. Then next to each activity, you think about specifically what's the time and resources. Can we hire it? Or is this something we have to do as a team? What's it going to take? Time. Now, that's not the calendar. That's just this activity takes this much time. From there, then you open up the calendar and you have to ask, what can we realistically get done? I know for me as an entrepreneur, I would always underestimate how long things took, and I would overestimate how much I could get done in the period of time. So you have to track it in order to understand, is this real? Because there's this delusion, it's just like I do sales training for people and they say, I called everybody and they all said no, or everybody tells me the price is too high. And I'm like, okay, who did you call? Like, I want to see give me the names. And they're like, they called 6 people. I'm like, that's not everybody. Like, okay, so, but there's this delusion because they get conditioned, or they hear it, or someone on their team says, everybody says our prices are too high, or who's everybody? So it's really about that critical thinker. So once you've got your time and resources, and you're going to have to go back and listen to this episode, because I know I'm talking a little fast today because I'm excited. I haven't had too much caffeine, but this is not a keynote, everybody. So just be clear. This is a podcast episode. I'm trying to put as much in this short little episode that we have, trying to action pack it in. But once you have the time and resources and you schedule it, then you have to execute. You got to measure what's working, what's not, modify and repeat. So from the top, do a brain dump, chunk and categorize, pick your priorities, what action steps are going to help you reach those priorities, how long is it going to take to execute on each of those steps so you can see if it's really realistic. You can't put 30 hours of work in an 8-hour day. You have to look at, is this realistic? Then you're going to look at who you can actually hire or leverage to get the work done. Then you're going to actually schedule it, execute, measure to see whether it worked. And then you're going to repeat what works, and you're going to throw away the stuff that doesn't. And for the full disclosure for this episode is for educational and informational purposes only. We are not giving you legal advice, nor are we telling you not to follow your systems. So you cannot hold this episode or me or my assigns responsible. Just use your systems. Okay, there we go. I had to put that in every recording.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think my big takeaway is you got to take the action. I know there's a lot of ways to categorize it, chunk it, measure it, make sure that we're not going too far down the path of doing something wrong. But the best thing to do is just do it. Don't keep talking about it. Get out there and do it, and emulate the people in the system that are crushing it, the people that are doing it right.
100%.
Don't be afraid to talk to them. Like, go up there and figure out, hey, you're the person at convention everyone's talking about. You're the one in my power team group that everyone says, hey, they have the best process. They're the best at sales. They're the best at keeping their profitability high. Those are the people you want to emulate. So that's the benefit of being in a franchise. You have this network of like-minded people that want to collaborate and help you. So I think that whole kind of key to action that you were just referencing makes a ton of sense. So, Ford, you see a lot of brands. I know you're a keynote at a lot of brands. You mentioned PuraClean. I've placed some clients in the PuraClean restoration system. I love that system. What's next in the world of franchising? How can listeners prepare to stay ahead?
Well, I think what's next, I do have a crystal ball. It's sitting right here behind me. I actually do have a crystal ball. Because people always ask me, do you have a crystal ball? I'm like, yeah, actually I do. But, what's next is be ready for a complete disruption in the customer journey. I just think that, AI is going to take hundreds of millions of jobs. It's going to create hundreds of millions of jobs. So, don't sell everything and move to the forest. Or, the world's going to keep spinning. Let's not worry. I'm not worried about AI taking over the world yet. I'm just saying that yet. And I would just say this, don't get seduced by technology. It's just a new tool. It is going to be the most disruptive tool. It's not like the internet. It's not like social media. It pales in comparison to the disruption that those elements created. You and I are probably old enough to remember when email came out, and I'm certainly remember color TVs and went from 8-track to cassette to CDs to DVDs to streaming. So I've been through around the block a few times. But what I would say is next is, seriously, everybody, if there's one thing from this episode you can take away, is just be a critical thinker. Just don't drink the Kool-Aid and assume that everything is this way or that way. It's okay to question. I always say, if you have a belief that isn't serving you, it's time to get new beliefs. So I'm going to ask you a question, Mike. We just met in the green room, up here, and I'm going to ask you a question out loud. What color are yield signs?
They are white, black, and red.
Okay. So all your listeners, I'm just curious, how many of you listen to this episode?
If you're in the United States.
Yeah, if you're in North America, the United States, actually in Canada too, by the way. So North America, in U.S. and Canada, yield signs changed to red and white in 1976. But when I ask a group of 500 people at a conference, even millennials that weren't even born then, instinctively they say yellow. And the reason I asked that question, the reason I asked you, it's a little harder with an audience of one as opposed to if there was 10 people here, I guarantee 9 of them would have said yellow. And some of you were thinking yellow.
You should have told me in the green room, I would have said yellow.
Yeah, of course, right? So what I would say is this: the point of that exercise is if you have a belief that isn't serving you, it's time to get some new beliefs. Some people think that Google pay-per-click doesn't work or networking doesn't work, but if you execute it ineffectively, then it doesn't work. It's no different than marriage. But people say marriage doesn't work. Well, there are people that marriage does work, right? I mean, so you can't say this or this doesn't. I want you to be careful of wide brush thinking that it's all or nothing. And that's what I would say, the biggest failure is having a belief that isn't based on any real research or validation, where you're just, maybe it's your old conditioning and you just think something that isn't true. And so if you're asking the wrong question, then the answer doesn't matter. So ask better questions about your business and you will accelerate the growth in your business.
I love it. Ford, great. And I appreciate you putting me in the hot seat. Hopefully I did okay.
Oh, you did great. So you did great.
There we go. Love it. All right. Well, Ford, this has been great. Anything else that you want to add to the mix about franchising before we wrap up today?
No, I would just say if anybody has any questions, connect with me on LinkedIn, connect with me on social media. If you're a franchise brand, and I'm throwing in a plug, and you're interested in having a speaker, check me out first. Watch my demo video. Don't take it from me. Go check out my Google reviews. Go watch my demo video. I've keynoted IFA. I've keynoted this. I was the opening keynote for the Canadian Franchise Association. I work with a lot of brands, and I'm so thankful to be a guest on your show because you reach the people I reach, which are franchisees, which are my people.
Yep. Well, Ford, I appreciate it. And if anyone listening to follow on Ford's plug would like to connect with Ford and his team to learn more about aligning leadership, marketing, sales, AI innovation to deliver measurable results, contact me at franchiseqb.com or on X at QBFranchiseQB. I'll get you connected. Thank you, Ford, so much for taking the time to get in the huddle with us today.
Thank you.
You got it. Thank you for listening to the Franchise QB podcast, where you're at the helm of your future as a franchise owner. If you enjoyed the content, please rate the show and recommend it to anyone that might be interested in franchising. Make sure to visit franchiseqb.com to subscribe to my newsletter and for an actionable playbook to go from walk-on to legend in your new business. Follow us on Twitter at QBFranchiseQB and join us every week for a new episode. See you next time.
Visit franchiseqb.com to take the next step of your journey towards wealth, independence, and franchise ownership. And remember, when working for the man gets old, you must do something bold. Thank you for listening.